There, welcome to Five Things Live. I'm Bernadette Smith, keynote speaker and writer, and I bring good vibes to DEI. Listen, folks, there's plenty of bad news out there. This show is about the good stuff, real progress, real stories and ideas to help you make your work and life more inclusive. Your proof of positive change. In this week's episode, I'm joined by Maria Gallucci, her, multi award winning real estate agent and proud CODA, Children of Deaf Adults, author of Raised in Silence, both a love letter to the deaf and hard of hearing community and a guide for bridging communication gaps. This week, our conversation is about deaf athletes smashing barriers, Target's accessible checkout, Costa Rica's transgender political breakthrough, and more. Maria, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
It's great to have you. I will say you are the first CODA we've ever had as a guest, and you're also the first realtor I've ever had as a guest. So I'm thrilled to kind of dig into your work and learn a little bit more about your purpose in all of this. So,
Yeah, that's great.
congratulations on the book.
Thank you so much. It's been years in the making. Now it's finally here.
Awesome. Well, can you tell folks a little bit about yourself?
So I'm Maria Gallucci, and I'm one of six hearing kids, and both of our parents were deaf. And I think I just made my mission because I saw my parents struggle with finances and with not understanding the paperwork and everything. So I just made it my mission to make sure everyone felt seen and heard and understood.
That's amazing. And so you obviously are proficient in American Sign Language, ASL, right?
Yes,
And
that's my first language.
awesome. So that's amazing. And so you created aslrealty.com. Can you tell folks a little bit about that?
So I did a national platform to help deaf and hard of hearing clients get the communication that they needed with realtors who sign as well. And so I just made I wanted everyone else, not just Colorado, to be able to be help on an underserved community.
That is really great. I'm sure that your clients just feel, uniquely seen. It's something I certainly take for granted, my ability to just simply communicate and I guess tell me what is the word in
Yeah,
English?
yeah, exactly. I think it was just bridging the gap between the two worlds because ASL is just another language that I think people don't realize that they're just the same as all of us. Like they're not any different than any of us. It's just a communication barrier.
Absolutely. Well, we will make sure this show has closed captions. It always does, but it's really important. Accessibility is something that we've always tried to do here at Equality Institute, but sometimes technology makes it more difficult rather than easier. I would love to hear some tips from your book about a guide for bridging communication gaps. Are there any sort of specific ideas that you share that you'd like to bring to our listeners?
Yeah, we get if you see anybody who has deaf or hard of hearing, you can still communicate with them even if you don't know ASL. It's just the matter of just trying. You can even type it on your phone, like talk to your phone and show it to them, and then they can type back so you can communicate that way or grab a piece of paper and pen and write to help them out.
That makes a lot of sense. That's makes a lot of sense. Actually, sometimes we talk about ASL and on the show with some ideas with some of the stories. Last week there was a story about British Sign Language. I'm not sure if you caught that episode, but there's a cafe in East London where all of the baristas are deaf or hard of hearing, and customers have to order in BSL, but there's a touch screen that shows them how to do it. So it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, I've seen that cafe. It's been advertised. Like I love that, and that's there's a lot of there's even like I think there's a coffee shop in like I think it's in Washington where they're all deaf and hard of hearing clients, and then they show you the signs. It's just like the basic signs that you would be able to learn on your phone. Like you could even like Google it, and it'll show you the sign.
Oh, really? That's awesome. That's amazing. Any other tips that those of us who are hearing should be aware of that's just going to help us kind of on an everyday basis or as it comes up, just be a little bit more inclusive? Anything else you want to share?
I think just trying and just looking at them when you're talking to them. Maybe you don't have to talk. louder because obviously they can't hear you, but
Hmm.
if you're just trying to make them feel included, I think that goes a long way.
Great. Sounds great. Okay. Well, in this week's Five Things newsletter, I wrote a little bit about communication as well. My in laws were visiting over the weekend, and we get along great now. But, when I first came onto the scene 11 years ago, my mother in law, she wasn't very excited. Her first real conversation with me after some like stonewalling, the first time she tried, she started with something to the effect of, "So, what's your deal?" And, I just decided to lean into that as an opportunity to be vulnerable. So I started just by saying, "Well, my mom and dad died a few years ago, and I started that way because I knew that as a mom, she would probably have some compassion and then like me a little bit more." So I kind of led into vulnerability, and it worked. But my in-laws, they live in a red state, and they have definitely have been on their own journey towards LGBTQ plus and other inclusion. And they've come a long way, and I think that's what growth looks like. They've asked questions, they've listened, they've changed, and it starts in those awkward conversations that sometimes start with, what's your deal? But we have to kind of start somewhere, right?
Yeah, I agree. Because when my son came out as gay, which I think that the deaf and hard of hearing community and the LGBTQ plus community go in hand because all they want to do is feel included and not
Mm-hmm.
just excluded. That just because you're different doesn't mean that you're outside of anyone else.
Yeah, exactly. So your son must have felt a lot of support when he came out.
Oh yes, yeah. He's. I think that doesn't matter how you are or anything. And he was. I just said, okay, well, it's fine. I just made him feel as much included and as much having him feel like he was his authentic self. So as soon as because he
Mm,
came out young, he came out when he was 12,
mm,
and I think that it was like a weight lifted off him to
mm-hmm,
be able to feel like, oh, my mom still accepts me and loves me just the way I am.
that's great. And it makes me think about stories and the power of stories in bridging those gaps that we spoke about. And what's a good way to actually have a sort of get to know you conversation with someone who is deaf or hard of hearing? I mean, is that just by literally passing messages back and forth, or the phone texting? How do you actually like build a rapport?
I think, yeah, it's about like taking notes or like, and then the phone thing is huge because they're actually watching you try with them. And I think
Mm,
that if they know that you're trying with them, it just makes like having an effort with them. I think that just makes all the difference in the world.
mm. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, because we know that inclusion never really happens by accident, right? It always requires intention. Because our brains
Exactly.
are sort of wired to be exclusive and to other folks.
Yeah, exactly. And we're all the same. We're all here. I mean, love is love, and we're all here for the same thing.
Yep, exactly. All right, well, on that note, let's get into this week's good vibes. The first story this week comes from the National Deaf Pickleball Tournament. Um, Listeners and readers will know I am a big pickleballer, so I was excited about this story. The tournament sold out in hours, drawing over 500 deaf and hard of hearing athletes from ages 18 to 80 to Maryland. So, this is an event where sign language is the default, no one has to adapt for access, and deaf culture is the main stage.
Yes, I think that's awesome. We had one here that was a soccer tournament. So I think sports really puts all the kids together too, because I mean the kids feel isolated and left out of a lot of things because they can't hear. And so I think sports is so important to the kids because it makes them feel included and they're not so isolated by not doing anything. So I thought that was amazing.
Yeah. I mean, it's amazing where, I think anywhere where um the dynamic is flipped, right? Where deaf culture is the default, right? And hearing folks have to adapt. So I think that's
Yeah.
pretty special.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's great, and they do like they'll go to Gallaudet University, which is a deaf college,
Mm-hmm.
to do like the ABC, like the what's that called? The spelling bees and things
Oh
like that.
yeah.
So I think once or when they get to do things like that, it makes them feel like included and so special. I think I love that they do that.
Awesome. All right. Well, the second story this week comes from Target, which I will admit used to be a regular on Five Things and has not been on Five Things in quite a while. But Target is back. They have a new accessible self checkout co created with blind and low vision shoppers. This uses tactile controls, audio prompts, and braille to eliminate barriers to buying. And it's the first of its kind in US retail.
I love that because it's accessibility. And
Mhm.
so like for them to be able to like feel the braille and be able to like be like know what's happening. I think that's amazing because I love like the street the ones that tell you to walk and it beeps while you're
Mhm.
walking for the blind. Like I love that they added that. I think that just it's all about it. It's like or accessibility for sure.
And reducing the friction, to everyday life and everyday, in this case, transactions. And there's this friction built in that I don't have to experience that I take for granted.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I love that.
And when we sort of have that kind of, we build things with that in mind first, it sort of, it benefits everyone.
Yeah, exactly. It helps everybody and it all helps us all just be a community.
Exactly. All right, the third story this week comes from Costa Rica, where Gerhard Philip Hernandez Padilla just became Costa Rica's first openly trans elected official. He is now vice mayor of Moravia with 45.36% of the vote. Pretty big deal because there's a lot of anti LGBTQ policies in this area, in this region, and his representation really matters.
I know. I absolutely love that, especially like with my son and everything. And Costa Rica is one of our, we're actually leaving there next week to go to Costa Rica. So I love that they support him and they have a community like that out there. And I think that Costa Rica has always been more open with that stuff. And I think inclusion is everything.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, he is a trans man. And so he's sort of acknowledging that as a trans man, he has privilege, he has more passing privilege, um, and he has barriers, right? So I think that one of the things that's significant is when folks who are in marginalized communities ourselves also acknowledge the unearned advantages that we may have. And I like that he's sort of thinking about, not just himself, but who can he lift up because of the privilege he has.
Yeah, I agree. I like 100%. I think that's going to be amazing over there. I think that's absolutely great.
All right, the fourth story this week comes from Sesame Street, where Sesame Workshop launched Happy. No, let me back that up. The fourth story this week comes from Sesame Street, where Sesame Workshop launched Healthy, Happy, Ready, free digital resources to help military children manage deployments, moves, and reunions. So Elmo models things like naming emotions and building connection, and the program teaches things like resilience tools that are often reserved for therapy. And this is pretty significant because military connected kids tend to be have more anxiety.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's so tough on them when because they move a lot too. So then they have to go and meet new people again and make new friends. So I think that it's amazing that they're doing that and recognizing how stressful it can be for children to keep moving from place to place and have to make new friends. It's like it's very like nerve wracking for them, I think. And it's hard to make friends in the first place.
It is. It is hard to make friends, and I think that you're right. The sort of the anxiety of constant moving and whatever might be happening with their parents who are deployed, that type of stuff, the layers of stress that these kids could be under. And having this program kind of meet them where they are and destigmatize even discussions of mental health and anxiety.
Exactly. I think so too, because it's getting more and more um I think harder for kids nowadays in general. So I think having that accessibility to that, it's going to be very good.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's hard for adults sometimes to learn coping tools, right? So,
I agree. Yeah. So imagine a child like, yeah. So no, I think it's great.
the last story this week comes from Walmart, which hasn't been on Five Things in a while either, but they are eliminating synthetic dyes and 30 plus additives from its private label food lines. The goal they set for themselves is by January 2027. Now, about 90% of their products are already dye free, but this is the largest U.S. grocer to set a full timeline and make plans to make this happen. And it's going to disproportionately affect low income families who are the buyers primarily of these more budget friendly products.
Yeah, I think especially in America, even with our foods and everything, like we have so much preservatives and things, we have so much dyes, and I think this is going to help tremendously, and hopefully it'll keep the cost down too for those families who need it. But like people are getting allergic reactions, and like we're all getting sick from like the preservatives, and so I think that's really good that they're doing that.
Yeah, and hopefully, they're setting a precedent for other grocers, other retailers to do the same because, when Walmart kind of raises the bar in that way, it sort of says, hey, you got to step up, you got to compete.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that if they keep all the cost down because a lot of people are, I mean, there's so many like steroids and all that stuff in all of our stuff. So it's hard
Hmm.
to, I think it's good to make everything go more wholesome, I think.
I agree. All right. Well, let's get into this week's good vibes to go. I'll share my good vibe to go, and then I'll invite you to share your good vibe to go. All right, so my good vibe to go this week is, some folks who are regulars know that I really love stand up comedy, and I also like good vibes that are kind of introduce us to other worlds and where we can enjoy and have fun being introduced to other worlds. So, with that in mind, check out Zarna Garg's stand up comedy. She has two hilarious specials on Hulu. I've seen them both. One of them came out this year called Practical People Win. She is an Indian mother and has some really great stories. So check that out. I'll put the link in the show notes. Maria, what is your good vibe to go?
So my good vibe is to try to love everybody and just try. And then this is for Colorado, but there's a center on Colfax that helps the LGBTQ plus community, and it's called the Center on Colfax, and they also do nationwide stuff. So if anybody is hurting or suffering, they can always go there.
All right. Thank you, Maria. I appreciate that. And I agree. We have to love everybody. And I know it is hard. It can be hard. And it starts with those tough conversations, and I'm imperfect at it. I am like a master avoider. So
Yeah,
of those tough conversations, especially with my family, I'll be honest. So I think we kind of have to lean in, even if it means starting with something like, what's your deal?
yeah, exactly. And
All
no
right.
one's perfect, but as long as you're just trying, then that's what the effort is.
That's right. All right, Maria, can you tell folks how to get in touch with you?
So my website is galluccihomes.com. And then I have also the aaslrealty.com. And then you could get the book at any book retailer, Amazon, or I raisedinsilence.com is for the book.
Awesome. Thanks, Maria. Folks, if you don't already get the Five Things newsletter, you can subscribe at 5thingsdei.com. Have a great week.